The other day, somebody in my life experienced the loss of something very important to them. It wasn't a person, but this thing still really held a pretty significant value in this person's life and had for a really long time. And so this person reached out to me because they felt caught between this tension of this thing is not a person, and I kind of feel weird or off about feeling this upset about losing it. And they were just asking me about kind of what my recommendation would be in terms of moving through that grief. And I just explained to them that grief is not something that we ever get over. It's something that we learn how to carry more lightly. And at the beginning of the grieving process, it often feels very heavy and very all-consuming because there's so much about loss that requires us to really look at meaning in our life. It requires us to look at what matters to us and what the thing we lost meant for us and what it means now that it's not there. And all of that takes an immense amount of energy, an immense amount of time. And so my first encouragement to this person was to just be patient with himself and to just really consider that this might take some time, and that even though it was not a person, the role that this thing played in this person's life was really significant, and that we don't get to choose really the impacts that things have on us, even if they are not a person. And that impact is not lessened because it is not a person. And then from there, I just really encourage the person to, over time, to take things slow. So there would be some kind of next steps that needed to be taken in order to move through the loss of this thing in the person's life. And I just said, when you feel like you have the capacity mentally and emotionally to begin that process of letting go, then just take one baby step at a time, even if it seems really, really simple and really little. Try not to judge yourself for what it might bring up in you emotionally. Again, it's worth being gracious with yourself and to just continue to honor and recognize the special place that this thing had in your life. And so I often like to say about grief that grief is the sign that something in our life mattered to us. And so if we're never feeling grief, it's likely because very little in our life matters to us. And that is not a meaningful or fulfilling life to live. And so if we want meaningful and fulfilling lives, unfortunately, grief is the other side of that coin, because loss is not a problem to be solved either. It's simply a part of being alive in the world that we live. So that's just a little bit about grief, especially as we move through fall, a time of letting go and releasing things. Thought it might be helpful. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voice Memos from a Therapist. I'm Graham McBride, a licensed professional counselor associate, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss our next memo when it comes out, always on Monday mornings. Just a reminder, the content in these podcasts is just my own opinions. They should not be considered therapeutic counsel or advice. And as always, I reserve the right to continue to learn and grow, as I hope that we all are. If you have further questions, feel free to find me on social media at gmc.counseling. This podcast is also available on YouTube if you're more of a video person, along with some longer form content. And finally, if you would like to learn more about what was discussed today, you can find more details in the show notes. As always, I hope you have an amazing day. The other day, somebody in my life experienced the loss of something very important to them. It wasn't a person, but this thing still really held a pretty significant value in this person's life and had for a really long time. And so this person reached out to me because they felt caught between this tension of this thing is not a person, and I kind of feel weird or off about feeling this upset about losing it. And they were just asking me about kind of what my recommendation would be in terms of moving through that grief. And I just explained to them that